Welcome to ReadingBear. Today we've got a story where OP's boss claims their job is easy and they're replaceable, so OP decides to prove them right. This happened about 3 years ago at a mid-sized manufacturing company where I worked as their sole IT systems administrator. I know what you're thinking, another IT horror story. But trust me, this one has a satisfying ending that still makes me smile when I think about it. Let me give you some background first. The company manufactured specialized industrial equipment for the food processing industry. Think conveyor systems, packaging machines, that sort of thing. They had about 200 employees across manufacturing, sales, engineering, and admin. The whole operation ran on a complex web of interconnected systems that I had built and maintained over my 5 years there. When I started, their IT infrastructure was basically held together with duct tape and prayers. They had ancient servers, no backup systems worth mentioning, and a network that went down if someone sneezed too hard. The previous IT guy had quit without notice, leaving behind a mess of undocumented systems and Band-Aid fixes that nobody understood. I spent my first year just stabilizing everything. I implemented proper backup systems, upgraded their servers, redesigned their network architecture, and created comprehensive documentation for everything. I also integrated all their systems: manufacturing execution system, inventory management, customer relationship management, accounting, payroll, you name it. Everything talked to everything else through custom interfaces I had built. The manufacturing floor alone had dozens of computerized machines that needed constant attention. These weren't simple plug-and-play devices. Each machine had its own software requirements, network configurations, and integration points with the main systems. When a machine went down, production stopped, and every minute of downtime cost thousands of dollars in lost productivity. I also managed all the engineering workstations that ran specialized CAD software for designing their equipment. These workstations needed powerful hardware and very specific software configurations. The engineers were constantly working on tight deadlines for custom orders, and any computer problems could delay projects and cost the company major contracts. Then there was the sales team with their mobile devices, VPN access, and cloud-based presentation systems. They needed to be able to access customer data, pricing information, and technical specifications while out in the field. I had set up a whole mobile device management system to keep everything secure and synchronized. The office staff relied on a complex mix of legacy systems and modern software. The accounting department used an older ERP system that I had to keep running on increasingly obsolete hardware. HR used a different system for payroll and benefits. Customer service had their own ticketing system. All of these needed to share data and work together seamlessly. I was also responsible for cybersecurity, which in a manufacturing environment is no joke. Industrial systems are prime targets for ransomware and other attacks. I had implemented multiple layers of security, including firewalls, intrusion detection systems, employee training programs, and regular security audits. Beyond the technical stuff, I had become the go-to person for anything remotely technology-related. New software evaluation, vendor negotiations, compliance audits, disaster recovery planning. It all landed on my desk. I worked closely with every department to understand their needs and find technological solutions to improve their efficiency. The job was challenging but rewarding. I had essentially built the entire technological foundation that allowed this 200-person company to function efficiently. Production was up, costs were down, and they hadn't had a major system outage in over 2 years. Then the company hired a new operations manager. Let's call him Boss. He came from a larger corporation where IT was just another department, with dozens of specialists handling different pieces. He had never worked somewhere with a single person responsible for everything IT-related. From day one, Boss seemed to have it out for me. He would schedule meetings during critical maintenance windows, demand instant responses to non-urgent requests, and constantly question my decisions without understanding the technical details behind them. The first major conflict came about 6 months after he started. I had planned a weekend upgrade to replace some aging network equipment. This wasn't optional. The hardware was reaching end of life and starting to fail randomly. I had scheduled it months in advance, ordered replacement equipment, and coordinated with all departments to minimize disruption. The Friday before the upgrade, Boss called me into his office and told me to cancel it. Apparently, they had a potential customer tour scheduled for that Monday, and he didn't want to risk any problems. I explained that the current equipment could fail at any time, and that postponing the upgrade actually increased the risk of problems during the customer visit. He cut me off and said he didn't care about technical details. The tour was more important, and I needed to make sure nothing went wrong. So I canceled the upgrade, sent back the rental equipment I had arranged for the weekend work, and hoped for the best. Of course, the old network switch failed spectacularly on Tuesday morning. The entire office network went down for 4 hours while I scrambled to implement a temporary solution with spare equipment. The manufacturing floor kept running since it was on a separate network segment, but the office staff couldn't access email, customer data, or any of the business systems. Boss was furious. He demanded to know why I hadn't prevented this outage. When I reminded him that I had tried to replace the failing equipment but he had canceled the upgrade, he brushed it off and said I should have had better backup plans. This became a pattern. Boss would override my technical decisions for business reasons, then blame me when those decisions led to problems. He started copying upper management on emails, criticizing my performance, always conveniently forgetting to mention his role in the situations he was complaining about. The real turning point came during budget planning season. I had submitted a detailed proposal for infrastructure improvements, including server upgrades, security enhancements, and some redundant systems to improve reliability. The total cost was significant but well within industry standards for a company their size. Boss scheduled a meeting with the CEO and CFO to review IT expenses. He had clearly prepared for this meeting, with charts and comparisons showing how much they were spending on IT compared to his previous company. Of course, his previous company was 3 times larger and had completely different requirements, but he glossed over those details. During the meeting, Boss painted a picture of IT as an unnecessary expense center. He claimed that most of what I did could be handled by a part-time contractor or even automated entirely. He suggested that their IT needs were simple and that they were massively overpaying for basic services. I tried to explain the complexity of their systems and the risks of cutting corners, but Boss kept interrupting with oversimplified analogies. He compared the manufacturing network to his home Wi-Fi and suggested that server maintenance was like changing the oil in a car. Simple, routine work that anyone could do. The executive seemed receptive to his arguments. After all, who doesn't want to cut costs? They approved a drastically reduced IT budget and told me to make it work. Over the next few months, Boss made my life increasingly difficult. He instituted new approval processes for everything, requiring written justification for routine maintenance tasks. He started scheduling mandatory meetings during times when critical systems needed attention. He even suggested that I should be available 24/7 for emergencies, but refused to approve any overtime pay. The breaking point came during a particularly busy period. We had 3 major projects running simultaneously: a new production line installation, a customer data migration, and a security audit required by one of our biggest clients. I was working 12-hour days trying to keep everything on track. On top of the project work, we had the usual daily fires to put out. A CAD workstation crashed and needed rebuilding. The email server was running low on disk space and needed expansion. The production scheduling system had a database corruption issue that required immediate attention. The wireless access points in the warehouse were having connectivity issues affecting the inventory scanners. I was in the middle of troubleshooting the database problem when Boss came by my desk. He didn't say hello or ask what I was working on. He just stood there watching me type commands into a terminal window. After a few minutes, he asked what I was doing. I explained that I was repairing database corruption in the production scheduling system and that it needed to be fixed before the afternoon shift started, or they wouldn't be able to see their work assignments. Boss watched for another minute, then said something that still makes my blood boil when I think about it. He said that what I was doing looked pretty simple, just typing a few commands. He suggested that maybe IT work wasn't as complicated as I made it seem. I tried to explain that those simple commands were the result of years of experience and deep knowledge of the systems. That diagnosing the corruption required understanding database internals, transaction logs, and recovery procedures. That making the wrong choice could corrupt the entire database and shut down production for days. Boss waved off my explanation and said that anyone could follow a manual or Google search to figure out what commands to run. He then made a comment that I'll never forget. He said that my job was basically glorified tech support and that I was easily replaceable. I felt my face getting hot, but I kept my voice level and asked what he meant by that. Boss explained that he had been researching IT service providers and found several companies that could handle our needs for a fraction of what they were paying me. He said that most IT work was routine maintenance that could be automated or outsourced. He went on to say that he was tired of me acting like I was irreplaceable and that maybe it was time to prove that the company could function just fine without me. He suggested that I take a long vacation so they could test out some alternative arrangement. I asked if this was his way of telling me I was being laid off. Boss smiled and said that wasn't his decision to make, but that upper management was definitely interested in reducing IT costs. He said that if I thought I was so essential, maybe I should look for a job somewhere that appreciated my skills more. Now, I should mention that I had been getting increasingly frustrated with the situation for months. I had been passively looking for other opportunities and had recently received a very attractive offer from a competing company. They had approached me through a headhunter after hearing about some of the systems integration work I had done. The new offer was for significantly more money, better benefits, and most importantly, management that understood the value of IT infrastructure. They wanted me to lead a team of specialists in building out their technology platform. It was exactly the kind of opportunity I had been hoping for. I had been reluctant to leave because I felt loyal to my current company and didn't want to abandon the systems I had built. But boss's comments made me realize that loyalty was a one-way street here. I looked at boss and calmly told him that he was right. If my job was so simple and I was so easily replaceable, then clearly they didn't need me anymore. I said that I would be happy to take his suggestion about finding somewhere that appreciated my skills. Boss seemed surprised by my response. I think he expected me to get defensive or beg for my job. Instead, I closed the terminal window, saved my work, and started clearing personal items from my desk. When boss asked what I was doing, I told him I was accepting his suggestion to find employment elsewhere. I said that since he had made it clear that anyone could do my job, there was no point in me staying where I wasn't valued. Boss backpedaled quickly. He claimed he hadn't meant that I should quit immediately and that we should discuss this more. But I was done. I told him that his message had been received loud and clear and that I would be submitting my resignation. I spent the next hour writing up my resignation letter. I kept it professional and brief, just stating that I was resigning effective immediately and that I would be available for a brief transition period if needed. I emailed copies to boss, the CEO, and HR. Within minutes, my phone started ringing. First HR, then the CEO, then boss again. Everyone wanted to know what was going on and whether we could work things out. I politely explained that I had received a better offer and that boss had made it clear that my services weren't essential to the company. The CEO asked if I would reconsider if they matched the other offer. I told him it wasn't about money. It was about working in an environment where my expertise was valued and respected. I said that boss had convinced me that wasn't the case here. I agreed to work one more week to document critical procedures and help with an orderly transition. Boss was noticeably absent from most of these conversations. I think he was starting to realize the magnitude of what he had just triggered. During that final week, I created detailed documentation for all the systems and processes. I documented server configurations, network diagrams, software licenses, vendor contacts, and troubleshooting procedures. I also created a prioritized list of critical tasks that would need attention in the coming weeks. I offered to help train my replacement, but they hadn't hired anyone yet. Boss kept insisting that they had contractors lined up who could handle everything. But somehow, these contractors never appeared during my final week. On my last day, I held a knowledge transfer session with the key people from each department. I walked them through the basics of their department-specific systems and gave them my contact information in case of emergencies. I also left detailed instructions for common problems and escalation procedures. Boss attended the session, but spent most of it on his phone. When I asked if he had any questions about the transition, he just said that his contractors would figure everything out and that they didn't need me to hold their hands. I handed in my laptop, security badge, and office keys. Then I walked out the door for the last time as an employee, wondering how long it would take for reality to set in. I didn't have to wonder for long. The problem started on Monday morning, my first day at the new job. I was in orientation meetings when my personal phone started buzzing with calls from my former company. I let them go to voicemail since I was busy with onboarding activities. When I checked the messages during lunch, there were 8 calls from different people. The email server had crashed during the weekend and wasn't coming back up. The backup system had failed to restore the data properly. The manufacturing floor was still running, but the office staff had no email and couldn't access customer information. I called back and spoke to the IT director from the corporate office, a different location. They had sent someone over to help, but he wasn't familiar with the customized configuration and couldn't get the system working. They wanted to know if I could walk them through the restoration process. I explained that I was at my new job and couldn't provide detailed technical support, but I offered to give them the contact information for the vendor who had originally helped me set up the email system. I also suggested they check the documentation I had left behind, which included step-by-step recovery procedures. The calls continued throughout the week. Each day brought new problems. The accounting system went down. The CAD workstations started having network connectivity issues. The manufacturing execution system began reporting errors. The inventory management system corrupted its database. Each problem individually was manageable, but they were happening faster than the temporary IT support could handle. The contractor's boss had promised never materialized. The corporate IT team was trying to help remotely, but they didn't understand the interconnected nature of the systems. By the end of the second week, things were getting desperate. Production was falling behind schedule because the manufacturing systems weren't communicating properly. Customer orders were getting mixed up because the inventory system wasn't synchronized with sales. Payroll was delayed because the HR system couldn't connect to the accounting database. The CEO called me personally and asked if I would consider coming back, even temporarily, to help stabilize things. He offered double my previous salary and admitted that they had underestimated the complexity of the IT environment. I felt bad for my former colleagues, especially the people who had always treated me well, but I explained that I had made commitments to my new employer and couldn't abandon them during my first month. I also mentioned that boss had been very clear about how replaceable I was, so surely his solution would work out soon. The situation continued to deteriorate. Word got around the industry about the problems they were having. Customers started questioning their ability to deliver on time. Suppliers became concerned about payment delays. Key employees began updating their resumes. The final straw came at the end of the third week. A major customer was scheduled for a facility tour and demonstration of a new product line. This was a multi-million-dollar deal that they had been working on for months. On the morning of the visit, multiple systems failed simultaneously. The presentation computers wouldn't boot. The manufacturing line control system locked up mid-cycle, stopping production with half-finished products stuck in the machinery. The customer database was inaccessible, so the sales team couldn't pull up the visitors' requirements and specifications. The demonstration was a disaster. The customers spent most of their time watching IT contractors frantically trying to get systems working. Instead of seeing a smooth, efficient operation, they saw a company that couldn't keep its basic infrastructure running. Not surprisingly, the customers decided to go with a competitor. The lost contract was worth more than 3 years of my entire salary and benefits combined. That afternoon, boss was terminated. The CEO called an all-hands meeting and announced that they were reorganizing the management structure. He also announced that they were actively recruiting for a senior IT position and would be investing heavily in infrastructure improvements. I heard about all this through my former colleagues, who kept me updated on the ongoing chaos. The company eventually stabilized, but it took them almost 6 months and cost them several more customers and key employees. They ended up hiring 2 full-time IT staff and a consulting firm to rebuild much of what I had created. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Boss had claimed that my job was simple and that I was easily replaceable. His actions proved exactly the opposite. The company learned the hard way that critical infrastructure and institutional knowledge aren't as simple or replaceable as they might seem. As for me, I was thriving at my new company. They had given me the resources and support to build something even better than what I had left behind. My new team respected my expertise and valued my input on strategic decisions. The work was challenging and rewarding, and I was making significantly more money. About a year later, I ran into the CEO of my former company at an industry conference. He approached me and apologized for how things had ended. He admitted that they had made a serious mistake in not recognizing the value of what I brought to the organization. He asked if I would be interested in coming back as a consultant to help them with a major systems integration project. I politely declined, explaining that I was happy where I was and fully committed to my current employer's success. The CEO nodded and said he understood. Then he mentioned something that made me smile. He said they had learned their lesson about the importance of IT infrastructure and had instituted new policies to ensure that technical expertise was properly valued and supported. He also mentioned that they now required all managers to undergo training on technology topics before they could make decisions affecting IT operations. Apparently, the board had mandated this after reviewing what happened when boss was in charge. Looking back, I have no regrets about how things played out. Boss got exactly what he asked for, a demonstration of how simple and replaceable my job really was. The company learned an expensive but valuable lesson about the importance of their IT infrastructure, and I ended up in a much better situation professionally and financially. The experience taught me that sometimes the best response to being undervalued is simply to take your talents somewhere they'll be appreciated. When someone tells you that you're easily replaceable, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let them try to replace you. I occasionally still get calls from people at my former company when they run into complex problems. I'm always polite and helpful within reason, but I make it clear that detailed support requires a consulting agreement. They usually figure out other solutions pretty quickly. Boss, meanwhile, had a much harder time finding new employment. Word travels fast in our industry, especially when someone's poor judgment costs a company millions of dollars and nearly destroys their IT infrastructure. Last I heard, he had taken a position with a much smaller company in a different industry. The whole experience reinforced something I already knew but sometimes forgot. Your value isn't determined by what one person thinks of your work. If someone doesn't appreciate what you bring to the table, there are plenty of others who will. Sometimes the best malicious compliance is simply taking someone at their word when they tell you that you're not needed. In Boss's case, he got to learn firsthand just how easy and replaceable good at work really is. The lesson for anyone in a similar situation is simple. If someone keeps telling you that your job is easy and that you're replaceable, maybe it's time to let them prove it. Just make sure you have a good alternative lined up first, because you might be surprised at how quickly they change their tune when reality sets in. 3 years later, my former company is doing well again, but they're much more careful about how they manage their IT infrastructure. They learned that some things that look simple on the surface are actually quite complex underneath, and that institutional knowledge and expertise have real value that's not easily replaced. As for me, I'm still at the same company where I landed after leaving, and I've been promoted twice. I now manage a team of specialists who each focus on different aspects of our technology platform. It's exactly the kind of role I had hoped to grow into, and it never would have happened if Boss hadn't convinced me to leave. So thanks, Boss, wherever you are. Your lack of appreciation for good IT work ended up being the best career advice I ever received, even if that wasn't your intention. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow.